We're going to talk today a little bit about perception. And it's kind of a tricky concept to talk about because it's kind of like the chicken before the egg. You know, what became first? Perception or reality? Reality, perception? So we're going to try to break this out for you a little bit in order to illustrate how this phenomenon affects your life. So we're going to talk about perception. First, we're going to talk about how. The internal process. You get part of your perception from your parents, from your biology. And by biology here, I mean the genetics you come with. Those kinds of things that are more objective, more consistent. So you get your internal process there. Then you also get perceptions from the culture at large. And where that comes from is where you step out of the family and you begin to interact with others. And you begin to add perceptions, those impressions. Think about it like this. When you're a little bitty child, we have pretty much the beginning process, the first one, the internal. And then as the child is introduced to the world, we have the other process of the cultural adding in filters. So all kinds of things come into play. How you look, where you come from, your race, your creed, your religion, all of those issues come into play to create the filter that creates your perception. Because we are the sum total, if you think about it, of all the people that we've interacted with over the years. And so our perceptions shift and change throughout our lives. So why is that important? Well, it's important because of these two reasons. One, and I think maybe more importantly, how we see ourselves. You know, how do we define who we are as a person? You know, for example, with men, you have the situation where a lot of men define themselves by their occupation. You know, I'm a teacher. And as a result of that, you know, that's kind of my identity, if you will. And I perceive myself as that. And I see the world through those eyes. And so that perception is how I see myself. Right? And so I process information based on how I see myself. The external perception is how I see others. And these are obviously linked. And so that process is when I observe the world and I begin to process what I see, it is going to be changed and modified by what we saw here. And that's why these two are so interconnected. So what's going to happen is your perceptions are going to change as you get older, as you have different experiences. And so someone that has a terribly traumatic experience in their life, well, that shifts their perception. And so they see things differently because they've had that experience. Someone goes to war, they come back to our country, and they see this world through those eyes because that's such a traumatic moment. Now, why is this really important? Well, that's the last thing. It's important because perception creates your reality, and that's why I put it in quotes. What we believe about the world is created by our perception. And so when we communicate with somebody, we have to learn who they are. We have to get an idea of their background, their experiences, and so forth, so we can begin to have empathy and understanding of why they see the world in the way that they see it. You know, it's interesting to kind of look and see how that changes the way that we see the world. And in these two chapters, it really talks about how that impacts it. But if you don't understand what perception is, it's going to be very hard to gain a clear understanding of what these two chapters are about.